The Galaxy Z Fold 2. Listen, I'm just going to call it the Galaxy Fold 2 from this point forward, so let's just get past the long name and the craziness. What an interesting device this has been. I've now had this for just about a month, and I did my 48-hour review, and a lot of the things that I said in that video, I'm going to kind of echo here again. However, there are some new changes after having this for a couple of more weeks, and I think it was definitely necessary to have this for as long as I had to really kind of give some final thoughts about it. Now, of course, if there are any software updates that make this thing beyond what it is now, maybe I'll do a little bit of an update. Let me know in the comments below if that's something you would like to see. But in the meantime, I think I can give some final thoughts about Samsung's most expensive phone ever. And let me tell you something, this thing is quite a doozy. There are a lot of things that I love about this thing, and there's a couple I could do without. And I'll tell you all about them right after this.
This is, you listening to Travis.
What up, players? Welcome back. And for all you new people, welcome. My name is Travis and I do tech videos every single week and have a blast doing them. If that sounds like fun to you, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Anything I talk about will be in the description below. But for now, let's just get into the video. So this device right here, which I'm not really going to call a phone, as you will find out later, has been really interesting. I've had quite the experience with it. And I actually came very close to returning it because for $2,000 for something that's not going to be my primary device for some reasons I will get into later, I just really couldn't justify keeping it. Now here's the thing, unlike some of the other tech reviewers here on YouTube, I'm not gonna do a whole bunch of fancy B-roll and a whole bunch of like spec analysis and stuff. I mean, you know about most of the specs on this thing by now. I figure that the most definitive review of this will be by Michael Fisher, a good friend of mine, Mr. Mobile, so make sure you check his video out when he releases it. Regardless, I do have some thoughts about this from someone who just loves tech. And someone who isn't like brand loyal. I'm not going to tell you that this thing is great just because Samsung made it. I'm going to tell you the good things and of course the bad things. Let's start with the thing that I said in my last video that some people didn't agree with, but I still to this day absolutely believe. This thing's not really a phone. Now I know some of you are going to immediately go, this is the dumbest comment ever, but let's just take a breath here for a minute. First of all, I'm not saying that this thing is better or worse than a phone. I just don't see it as a smartphone. You see, smartphones do a bunch of things very well. And this thing does a couple of things pretty darn well. One decently when it's closed, and one really awesomely when it's open. But in neither form are they really like a smartphone. Let me kind of explain. You see, with a smartphone, you have a fixed display that gives you more than enough space at all times to do the things you need to do. The front display on this, which is actually adequate for many things, including checking messages, checking notifications, and the like, is not wide enough to do other things. Like typing on this is a pain in the butt. It's almost unusable. Now, you can, of course, use voice dictation, which is fine. But how many people want to do that in like a crowded area? You don't want to do that. So while this is a lot better than it used to be, at least last year's version where the front display was so much smaller, the reality is this is not as good as a smartphone. Not this proportion. It's heavy, it's thick, and it's too narrow. It just isn't. And unless you've used this, you have no idea what I'm referring to. But if you have used this, you probably do. Having said that, once you open it, now it's better than a smartphone in most instances, but of course not all. Let's start with the display, which is amazing. And really the whole purpose of getting a Fold is to have this big, beautiful display. There are so many cool applications that just look fantastic on this. Now you can use things like Good Lock to get Instagram to completely fill up the screen, although it doesn't proportionately do a great job. It actually cuts off some of the images, but it looks great. All apps I've used on this thing look fantastic. It's just a really amazing display. And as someone who loves tablets like myself, this is my favorite way of using it. Unfortunately, it's so wide that while you do have a lot more room to type, I've noticed that the typing, well, at least with the built-in keyboard, is not as accurate as I would like. Now, there are other keyboards you can use. I've actually installed the Google keyboard, which fully fills the entire bottom portion of the screen. But even then, it's hard to explain why this isn't as good as it should be. You figure you have a bigger keyboard, you're gonna have less mistakes. But for me, that just wasn't the case. Now again, let me be very clear. This, to me, is still better than a smartphone. This is not. So at no point is this really a smartphone to me. a smartphone like a Galaxy Note 10 or an iPhone or anything like that, you can do everything with it flat. Everything is proportioned correctly, everything works. This, not so much. This is really great, but when you put it down, you can't really prop it up. That's another thing that I love the flex feature on this, but the reality is as soon as you do that, you're bifurcating the entire screen, so you're not getting that full display. And cases with kickstands, oh, let's talk about cases. I brought this up in the last video about this. Even today, you can't easily get a case. Now, a lot of people in the comments were talking about how you could order cases, but ordering a case and getting a case are two different things. You could order a case when this thing came out, but you weren't getting it until late October, sometimes early November. And as of the making of this video, still on Amazon and other places, eBay and such, you're ordering from China. You will get it eventually, hopefully. And this isn't entirely Samsung's fault, but it doesn't matter. I am not taking this $2,000 piece of hardware out without a case. I don't take any of my phones out without a case. You know I'm not taking one like this out. It's not happening. And while people have talked about how they dropped their phone and everything is fine, I am not the one. It's not gonna be me. I'm not testing it. I'm not testing the durability of this thing. It's staying inside until my case comes. Hopefully that'll be in the next day or two. I'm actually looking forward to that. But let me add something to that. Cases always make phones more bulky. This thing is already bulky. You're gonna add a case to this, you knocking fools out with it. It basically becomes a weapon. So for me, the clunky gets clunkier. It's just a little bit too thick. And again, I love opening it up. I love the big screen. There's so much I love about this. But let's talk about a couple of other things that while you're paying for an absolute premium phone, there's some things that aren't 100% premium. Now, real quickly, before I get into that, I want to mention I actually almost returned this. I bought this from Samsung.com, figured I wasn't going to keep it, so I tried to return it and was offered $100 to not return it. Samsung gave me $100 to keep this. I've never seen that before. But it actually makes sense if you think it through. You see, Samsung doesn't want to take this back and they can't sell it as new. They would lose money on that deal, plus the shipping and all the other things. So giving me $100 back from my purchase price actually saves them money. It's a very interesting strategy you don't see a lot of manufacturers doing, but I think in the case of a really expensive phone, they don't want returns. So bravo, Samsung. It worked on me. Let's talk about 5G. That's one of the things that differentiates this from a lot of other phones that came out last year and even early this year. But here's the thing, as I've been saying for a very long time, 5G really isn't even worth it. I mean, I actually did speed tests, and not only was this thing barely ever faster than my 4G phones, in some instances it was actually slower. That's terrible. And if you don't know anything about technology, you might be completely confused. But again, Mr. Mobile has covered this subject pretty extensively on his site. Make sure you check out Michael Fisher's channel. The reality is 5G is not a reason you should buy this or any other smartphone this year. Just consider it a little bit of extra whipped cream on the top because it's not the cake. With this thing being $2,000, I would expect the camera quality to be something I haven't seen before, and that's just not the case. The camera's fine, everything about it is fine, videos look good, pictures look good, like even the dynamic range in video where it's really dark inside but really bright outside, everything looks great. But it looks just like that on most Samsung phones. I don't think I've gotten anything better on this. And if I'm gonna spend all the money on it, I would figure that you would give me a little bit better optics. I mean, don't I kind of deserve that if I'm spending the extra money? And that's just an expectation I think needs to be met. This should have the highest quality camera on any Samsung phone, and it just doesn't appear to be. And man, that front-facing camera is not really that great. Battery life on this thing has been really great. The standby is amazing. Let me just talk about that. A lot of times when I have Android phones and I keep them on but don't charge them overnight, they'll lose a good percentage of their battery overnight. I haven't actually charged this thing in 2 days. Now, it's not to say that I've been using it hardcore over those 2 days, but I have been using it. And I've just been leaving it at my desk. Now it's at just under 40%. Again, not hardcore usage, but have been using it. I'm really impressed by the battery life of this thing. So if you need something that's gonna last you all day, this thing's gonna do it. And if you like to game, the display is so amazing on this thing that you are gonna take your mobile gaming to the next level. I mean, especially games with really great graphics, it just looks great. This thing is amazing in every single way as a gaming machine. Now, of course, propping it up means a special case or something like that, which you should eventually be able to buy if you have one of these. But I think at the end of the day, we need to think about this as a computing device, not a phone. As I've said before, it is something more. With wireless DeX and all the things you can do with this, this is basically a mobile computer. And in so many ways, you can get more things done on the run than maybe you can with your normal smartphone. Again, once it's unfolded. So for people who need productivity, yeah, I actually could recommend this. But for your average everyday consumer, there's of course no way I would ever tell you to buy this. For the tech heads out there, ones that absolutely want the coolest thing to be able to take this out and impress all your friends, I mean, it will. There's no doubt about it. Most people haven't seen or heard of anything like this. The Fold 2 is an amazing device at a ridiculous price. Perhaps the last question is this the future of mobile? Maybe. Certainly not at this price point, but if this can continue to iterate down where it gets thinner and thinner and less expensive, this is actually a really cool concept. And I don't know if many people are going to want this, but if it becomes the norm, people will accept it. That's kind of the same thing across any smartphone, whether it be notches or larger displays. Once upon a time, it was cool to have a small phone. Now all the phones have really large displays and people were kind of forced to adapt. So if this continues, I mean, I'm all in for it. I'm totally in for it. I love this technology. What do you think? And listen, at the end of the day, I'm going to applaud Samsung. I like this. I'm going to keep it, but it can't be my primary phone. It just can't. There's too many kind of weird things about it that I don't want to take this out and about, not be able to use the front display fully, and have to unfurl it every single time. And again, while this is the best way to use it, for me, just doesn't quite make sense. But maybe it does for you. If you bought one of these, leave me a comment below. Let me know how you're using it and what some of your favorite things are about it. For me, I mean, you'll see this from time to time on the channel. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Listen, I have some other videos I've actually done about this. There's one here and some other stuff down here. Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you check out some other videos I have coming out, which I'm actually pretty excited about. I'll see you again real soon. Peace and love.